Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory Podcast. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening that you have had a great weekend. You had a fun, watching some NFL playoffs, some basketball, and things such as that. And listen, in general, I'll say this. The calendar reads, Stephen Tolbert, 2026. And so far, it's been a pretty fun start to the year, sports-wise, in general, things like that. Braves country had the ability to move on from a forgettable 2020. Oh, my bad. I forgot. We couldn't leave 2025 in 2025. And that, unfortunately, is a segue into the topic of today's show. Myself, Shawn Coleman, along with my podcast partner, Stephen Tolbert. Stephen, as I always say, one of the best when it comes to breaking down the Braves. We're not going to call this an emergency podcast because that's meant for good news, but this is a bit of a breakdown. Unfortunately, the Braves got some news today, and it's not of the good kind. Stephen, what's the latest?
What's up, buddy? So we've gotten pretty used to this, unfortunately. We have done a number of these shows over the last 2 years of here's some, just gut-wrenching news that we just got. And, today was no different. I made the joke on Twitter that normally in January, so my phone was on the other side of the room, and I was watching, can't remember what time it was. I was just hanging out with my kids, I think. And my phone just started going crazy. I just kept buzz, 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 buzz. I was like, oh, damn, there's probably a signing, because that's normally what it is in January. There's the people that we follow and track this stuff really closely send out kind of an all alert that stuff's happening. And so I ran and grabbed my phone. No, not a signing. Just Ha-Seong Kim has, I guess, broken his hand or tore a ligament in his hand is the way to say it. He according to Mark Bowman, he fell on some ice in Korea and had to have tendon surgery on his middle finger.
Yeah.
That is going to cost him like 4 to 5 months, which we're going to get into the timeline, and we're going to get into all the where do the Braves go from here. But we're going to start the show with just what the hell?
The three letters that come to mind are WTF. That absolutely is the case. Yeah.
I mean, to have a guy, and then again, and I tweeted this as well. Last offseason, the Braves' big position player acquisition ended up missing basically the entire the first half with a PED suspension. And now again, the Braves' kind of number one position player acquisition, $20 million Ha-Seong Kim, is probably going to miss close to the first half of the season, recovering from finger tendon surgery, I guess is what we're calling it. I don't know, man. It really, it feels like the 2021 team burned some bridges on their way to that World Series, and we're just stuck in just purgatory of just nonsense every single year after that. I don't know. But this was a kick in the nuts because it happened it was out of nowhere. He's not even playing base. It's just a freak injury. He was, I'm assuming, hanging out with family or friends or something on some sort of ice and fell. It's just miserable is what it is. It's miserable.
Well, and the thing that I'll say is this, is that I think the biggest negative feeling about this is that it's just that the Braves can't escape stuff like this happening. And it's a legitimate feeling. Yeah, I'm not going to downplay anybody that feels that way. It just feels like, what do we have to do to, as you mentioned, get out of this vicious cycle of bad luck? I'm not going to downplay anybody who is tired of it. And I am the same way. But what I will say is that when you step back a bit and you realize, okay, it's happened. The thing that I'll say is that it's important to understand what the timeline is, right? And the reason why I say that is because, yes, and Stephen, I'll let you go into the details a bit here in a minute. There is a good chance that Ha-Seong Kim is going to miss 2+ months to start the season. That is a significant development. That is unfortunate with what the Braves invested in him in terms of, $20 million for 1 year. However, I will say that it doesn't mean that it's a sunk cost. It doesn't mean that there still can't be value that comes from Ha-Seong Kim. And the thing to me that stands out is that yes, while he'll miss the start to the season, there's still a chance that he could be around and in midseason form when the Braves need him the most as we get towards the end of the season and hopefully a playoff run. I'll go more into that in just a moment. But Stephen, first want to really make sure people understand we're hearing 4 to 5 months is the duration of time that Ha-Seong Kim will mean. However, when it comes to baseball, it's not just about missing 4 to 5 months. Does that mean he's going to miss 4 to 5 months before he can do anything baseball wise? Does that mean it's going to be 4 or 5 months from now? And that includes baseball activity, ramping up through a minor league assignment. What is the definition of that 4 to 5 months?
Yeah. So the Braves put out the initial tweet that told us what happened. And they're the ones that said recovery time is 4 to 5 months. And they offered no clarification on that. So immediately people started doing the math, and it's January 18th as we record this. So 4 months from now is May 18th, and 5 months from now is June 18th. So, I think Scott was the first person I saw ask the question, like, does that mean that in 4 to 5 months he's going to start baseball activities, and then he has to wait another month to do basically a spring training, and then he's ready? And so people were kind of asking that question. And then Gabe Burns of the AJC tweeted out, and I'm guessing he got confirmation because the Braves realized they didn't exactly make that clear, that the 4 to 5 month timeline includes a rehab assignment, or essentially a limited spring training, whatever you want to call it. And Gabe's tweet was essentially 4 to 5 months is how long it would take him to get back to major league games. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The 4 to 5 month timeline the Braves sent out includes the rehab process of getting ready to play in major league games. Again, that was Gabe Burns of the AJC that reported that. But I also had people like, I guess because the All-Star break is in the middle of July, people don't really understand that. Let's say it's 5 months. Let's say he comes back in 5. Let's just do the conservative. If he comes back earlier than that, obviously it's better. But let's just take the conservative route. Let's say it's exactly 5 months until Ha-Seong Kim plays in his first game with the Braves in 2026. The 81st game of the year is on June 24th. That's the 81st. That's the exact midway point of the season. So if his first game is not until June 18th, he is effectively missing the entire first half of the season. Again, because people see the All-Star break in July, they think that's the halfway point. The halfway point, and it's even earlier this year because they're playing like a full week of games in March at the beginning of the year. So by the time we get to the All-Star break, they're going to have already played like 65% of the season. So if you miss into June 18th, you've missed half the season effectively. Now, if it's May 18th, if it's on the 4 month side of the equation, it's more like it's like 60 games, I think I counted. So it's just past a third. So that's essentially the difference, right? If it's 4 months, he's going to miss around a third of the season. And if it's 5 months, he's going to miss half the season. And obviously we're going to get updates all throughout spring training. I'm guessing that timeline gets moved a little bit one way or the other, but as we sit here today, unfortunately, you kind of have to assume the Braves don't have any good injury luck these days. You kind of have to assume it's going to be the long end, which means Ha-Seong Kim is probably going to miss a month. And I mean, he's going to probably miss 5 months. He's going to miss half the season. So, I mean, it's just a kick in the nuts. There's no other way to say it. It really is. I mean, the Braves finally had a real shortstop for the first time in 4 years. Like a legitimate guy who you could expect to be at the very least a league average shortstop. And they gave him $20 million, and it's going to be very hard for him to be worth $20 million considering he's probably going to play half a season. It's not impossible, but it's going to be very hard. And then you have to ask the question, all right, well, how good is he going to be on the other side of this injury? Because he wasn't great on the other side of the shoulder injury last year. it just calls the whole contract into question, and honestly calls the whole year into question. Even if you get him back in June, you don't know what kind of player you're going to get because he's going to miss spring training. He's going to, he might have a shortened version of it in Gwinnett or something, but like he's always going to be behind. It just sucks. There's just no, I'm not going to kind of sugarcoat it. This is just crappy news.
Yeah. And I mean, that was going to be the next point, about Kim is kind of, two different perspectives. Here recently, after, several years since he came over to the major leagues of being healthy and productive and really not having any major injury scares, he can't stay healthy all of a sudden. And it's not injuries that are related to each other. It's the shoulder injury that occurred, and then of course the finger injury. And last year we saw it firsthand in Atlanta. Obviously, it was the right move for Atlanta to claim him. They had every reason to do that. But he didn't set the world on fire when he came over here. His defense declined a bit. He had under a 700 OPS. I bring those numbers up because of the point. It was certainly better than what we had with Nick Allen offensively. Don't get me wrong. But it did show that, he did not bounce back to his previous form, immediately following the injury. And now to your point, as we discussed before the show, how does that look once he comes back? Because that's your middle, it's his right middle finger.
Yeah.
There he hurt the tendon. How long does it take for him to comfortably be able to grip a bat, not only pain-free, but also just back to normal, to the full capacity of his skill set? That is something that I don't think anybody really has an answer to.
Well, not only grip a bat, but grip a baseball.
Yeah.
That's his throwing hand.
Yeah.
He's got to throw from shortstop.
Agree.
So, yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. There hadn't been a big history of this either. I'm sure that there have been other occurrences, but two notable ones was Tim Anderson back in 2022. It ended his season in early August, and then Matt Kemp back in 2015. I don't think he was with the Braves that year.
No.
He may have been, but he hurt his hand in September of that year. So that, and I'll end with this as far as Kim goes. So now your two starting middle infielders, both of them are coming off of significant hand injuries, or will be coming off significant hand injuries. We already know also Ozzie Albies struggles coming back from a wrist injury. So you're kind of back right again at the same spot that you have been over the past couple of years. And that reality is the biggest takeaway from all this. To your point, it's just we cannot get out of this vicious cycle of bad luck when it comes to being able to have health be reliable for our middle infielders.
Yeah. And remember last year, even though the Braves went through this last year with Jerks and Profar missing the first half of the season, the Braves got that money back because it was a PED suspension. So Profar wasn't paid. So the Braves were given the first half of his salary back, and they could use it elsewhere. I'm sure they have some sort of insurance on Kim, but I don't know that it's going to cover $10 million or whatever, half the season is equivalent of. Yeah, $10 million. So, it just sucks. It just sucks. And we're, the second half of the show, we're going to talk about some other options. We're going to talk about Dubon, and we're going to maybe talk about some external stuff. But just on the Kim side, I mean, he took this 1-year pillow contract as a hopeful way to get back out on the market and sign a big deal. Now he can still do that if he has a monster second half and shows everybody that the injuries, not only the shoulder injury from last year, but now the hand injury this year, or the finger injury, whatever it is, that he can produce. He still might get a decent sized contract, but I mean, yeah, the guy's on the wrong side of 30, and now he's had multiple seasons affected by injury. It's just not a good situation for him. It's not a good situation for the Braves, and we're not even a month into 2026, and we're having 2025 conversations all over again. It's unbelievable.
But the one thing that I will say, it's not a fun situation. It's a very disappointing, unfortunate situation. But the one thing that I will say in terms of a positive is that at the very least, the Braves are better prepared to deal with a development such as this now than they were in the past. More on that in just a moment after a word from our partners.
Hey, make good eats at home part of your 2026 New Year's resolution. HelloFresh is what we're talking about here.
Steak, seafood, whatever options you want. They have stone fruit to corn on the cob. Scott, I know you're a big stone fruit fan. But
Hey, you've eaten it all.
I have. I've tried a lot of things, but HelloFresh always delivers. They're fresh, delicious meals that you get to cook. So you feel like you actually accomplished something when you eat them after you're done cooking them.
Over 100 mouth-watering recipes each week. It's made with wholesome ingredients like 100% antibiotic and hormone-free chicken, because when dinner tastes this good, nothing hits like home cooking. Go to HelloFresh.com/FT10FM to get 10 free meals plus a free Zwilling knife, a $144.99 value on your third box. Offer valid while supplies last. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. Get America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh.
So, Stephen, the first thing that I want to do before, we've talked about Kim, how him individually, and I think you bring up a good point. We talk about it's unfortunate for the Braves. It's unfortunate for him as well. He seems to be a very likable, personality in the game, obviously a talented individual who was entering this 12 to 18 month window where he really had the chance to make true money, to make, generational type money. And unfortunately, it's just not worked out for him. Maybe in time, again, to your point, if he has a big second half, maybe it will. The first thing that I want to kind of hit on, though, is that with Kim having this injury, I know there was speculation out there. There's still some shortstops out there that could make sense for the Braves to go get. Could they make a significant? Could this make them want to go out and try to make another significant addition at the shortstop position? Because they do have questions about the shortstop position after 2026. We're going to get into some external options, but I wanted to hit on this first. In my opinion, this doesn't change anything about the Braves' focus for the rest of the offseason. To me, this doesn't mean that shortstop is now just as important as the Braves going out and making another significant addition to the rotation. The rotation addition still is the primary focus. I feel that internally and probably some minor move externally, that's how the Braves will address shortstop for the first half of the season. I don't expect for a significant reaction to the Kim news.
Yeah, I'm very curious what happens now because, let's be honest, there's not like a significant shortstop on the market to go get anyway. So they already got $20 million committed plus another $6 million to Dubon. So in a lot of ways, they've already got $26 million committed in 2026 to shortstop. So I don't really see them going out and making a big addition. But in terms of the whole offseason, I think I agree with that. I think starting pitching still needs to be the priority. And I think it is. I don't, if you wanted to look on the bright side of this, and we're going to talk about Dubon, but Dubon is a better defensive, and maybe this is a good segue into Dubon. So our best guess is Dubon is going to be the starting shortstop for 2 months, 3 months, whatever it ends up being for Kim. That's how long Dubon's going to be the starting shortstop. Dubon is a better defender than Ha-Seong Kim at shortstop. He is a couple of levels worse offensively. So, you could argue that the defensive upgrade, if Dubon can hit maybe a little over his head for a couple of months, you could see a world where Dubon could cover it up decently. Like if he's, let's say Kim misses 2 months, and that ends up being a third of the season. Let's say it's on the short side, and it's only 2 months versus 3 months. Can Dubon be a 1-win shortstop over 2 months with his defense? I think he could. Like, I don't think it's outlandish. And then, you'd be on pace to kind of get 3 wins from shortstop the way you were hoping to at the beginning of the offseason anyway. So, again, if you want to look at it positively, the Braves are set up because they got Dubon early in the offseason. They do have a guy who can play short and play it well and play it defensively better than Kim. Now, he can't hit the way Kim can hit. And I do think it hurts you in the outfield a little bit because I think Dubon was going to end up maybe platooning a little bit with Yastrzemski. When there's a lefty on the mound, I don't think they were going to play Yastrzemski, and I think they were going to DH Profar anyways. So I do wonder if they still go get a right-handed outfielder, maybe to make up for the fact that they just lost Dubon because he's no longer a bench piece. He's now a starter. But we can get into all those, that gets into the minutia a little bit. But I do think they are set up to at least weather it a little bit. It's just, it sucks to have, $20 million out there that you spent on a shortstop, and probably 10 million of it is just going to be dead money that you can't use elsewhere. I mean, that 20 million bucks or 10 million bucks would come in handy right now on a starter, but such are the breaks. But I do think the Braves at least have a defensive option in Dubon who can play short, and maybe they get lucky and he hits over his head for a month or two and they don't feel it too much, but I have a feeling they're going to feel it pretty good.
Well, let's get a bit more specific in that, because we've hit on it. We discussed the idea of what Dubon would look like compared to the two previous years of Nick Allen as well as Orlando Arcia. And I go back to the point that I made before. If Mauricio Dubon can give you Gold Glove level defense with a 650 to 700 OPS level of production, which is about an 80 to 90 WRC plus, that is an upgrade over what you've had the previous two seasons.
Yeah,
so
100%. Yeah.
From that perspective, it definitely is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I bring that up to say that's why I'm saying we're in a better position to deal with a significant injury. I'm not sitting here saying that doesn't take away from the significance of the loss of what Kim could have given you. But to your point also, one other factor in this, when we talk about what has occurred, when we talk about where Kim and Dubon are in their careers, both Kim and Dubon, I believe that Kim's 30 and Dubon is 32. Both of them are in the final year of their contracts. Kim was free agent, yes, but Dubon's going to be a free agent after this year. You can realistically look at, especially for Kim and Dubon, or you can look at it for both ways. You can realistically look at that this is probably their best chance in their careers to still turn in this season into a significant payday for the future.
Yeah.
So if Dubon now has the chance as a starter at shortstop, if he wants to come in and he wants to give 100 WRC plus with Gold Glove level defense, that all of a sudden becomes a really good shortstop.
Yeah.
And the Braves could benefit from that. And then Kim can come back and try his best to, play above his head. So it's a low percentage, I think. But there is an outcome where you've got two players who are in the middle of their careers, who are on one-year deals, who have every reason to play as good as they can to get a significant payday a year from now. That could play into the Braves' favor.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely get the contract year bump, which you see from a lot of players because they're on a contract year and they need a big contract, and all of a sudden they have the best year of their life. I would take that in a heartbeat right now. I do think, again, I think if you look at just the median outcome, the most likely outcome is that Dubon is a level or two below Kim offensively.
Yes. And that's really where the Braves need the upgrade from shortstop.
And that's what I was just going to say. Because the Braves didn't do anything significant to the offense, we said if the Braves aren't going to make a significant addition to the offense, which they didn't do, we both like Yastrzemski, but let's be honest, he's more of a mild addition to the offense. Then the additional offense at shortstop was going to play a big role in helping this offense get over the issues it's had the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, now you don't have that because, while Dubon is better than Nick Allen, we're just going to have to see how good he does. But the other thing you lose, and this may be more important than any of it, is that Dubon was going to be your super utility guy all over the infield and the outfield. Like Dubon was going to be your Ozzie Albies insurance. He was going to be in some ways he can play third base. He can play second base. He can play short. He can play left field. He can play right field. He can play center field. Like his utility was going to help you cover up other little things that popped up. If Ozzie is not 100% at the start, like I was coming into spring training thinking, well, maybe, if Ozzie's not 100%, I'm not sure that Dubon's not the starting second baseman to start the year until Ozzy's ready to go. Well, now you've lost that because Dubon's got to be your shortstop. So what I was so excited about having on this bench was having Mauricio Dubon and Eli White, who can defensively cover the entire field for you. All 8 positions, those 2 guys can cover. And having both those guys freed up to do that was going to be very valuable, in my opinion. And now the most versatile piece you have in Mauricio Dubon is now being tied, unless the Braves go do something external. Mauricio Dubon is tied to one position for 3 months, and he has to play it every day. And, I think he's going to get exposed a little bit as an everyday player, and you lose all the versatility of having him on your bench. So it's kind of a double whammy.
Yeah. So the main takeaway is you obviously still are in a better position than you previously were, but you're still a ways away from the position that you hoped you would have been with the investment that you made at the shortstop position this offseason. Another thing worth noting is, when we talk about Dubon now stepping up into that, everyday shortstop position, could that mean someone like a Nacho Alvarez, could make the major league team and he could be, kind of in that infield utility role? Well, yeah, that could be a possibility. I don't think that any of the shortstops like drafted last year, like I know some will ask about like an Alex Lodice, who the Braves took, I believe, in the second round of last year's draft. I don't think there's any type of, I don't think this leads to him being on some accelerated plan to get to Atlanta as soon as possible, or he breaks camp with the Braves or something like that. None of that is going to happen. But if Nacho Alvarez now becomes your most obvious internal candidate to kind of take on that super utility role, at least on the infield, we've already seen what he can do. And unfortunately, it's not a lot. So just think if there's another injury that were to occur, or say if Ozzy Albies struggles coming out of the gate, that also, basically what I'm getting at is that it's good to have Dubon as an option to take over shortstop, but your room for error when it comes to health and performance now is so much smaller than you had planned for it to be for the entire team. And we know the Braves have not had luck when it comes to room for error over the past couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you lose is the versatility. You lose the, still in Atlanta Hawks word, you lose the optionality. And again, I am curious to see if they add something on the offensive side. Like even like an outfielder or something to help platoon Yastrzemski, because, if Profar is going to DH a bunch, which I think he is, I think Dubon was going to, in some ways, platoon with Yastrzemski in left field. I don't know that for sure, but it wouldn't have surprised me. Obviously, they could have just DH one of the catchers, but we don't know what Shawn Murphy's status is going to be when we get to opening day either. So, like another right-handed bat makes it. It always made sense to me to potentially add another right-handed bat. It makes more sense now. Again, you did not add anything significant to your offense because you kind of did these incremental improvements at especially at shortstop. Well, now that's gone for probably half the year. So I don't know. I can make the argument they need to add a bat of some sort, at least to the bench, probably a right-handed bat, but I'm very curious to see how they react to this. And some of how they react to this will tell me how confident they are that Kim can come back and be a productive piece, at least in the second half of the year. I'm not going to make the joke about the Chip Carey joke about making a trade without having to make a trade, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how they react to that. And then, in the last segment, we're going to talk about a couple of external options that they might be able to look at, but it just sucks because it's money that's just dead money now. Probably at least half that contract is going to be dead money. And the Braves aren't the level of payroll team. They can just eat $10 million the way they're probably going to have to with Kim now. So we'll see how they respond.
Yeah. And we'll get more into it. And actually, let's jump right into that. How will they respond? And the thing that I'll say is this, is that once again, it is late January into February. And one of the things that stands out about the Braves is less than ideal shortstop depth entering the season. So if there's another bit of a bright side, it's the fact that Alex Anthopoulos has been here before. And through that, he's made trades before, right? So he's got a couple of different options. You can go a free agent route. We'll talk about a few guys here in just a moment. Or just like he did, I believe it was very early in the season, I want to say of 2000, either 22 or 23, he traded for Orlando Arcia from the Brewers. Last spring training, he traded for Nick Allen from the A's, I believe. And those guys initially actually showed value, right? They showed value for what the Braves got them for. The problem is that they just got overexposed. Those guys were meant to be organizational shortstop depth. They weren't meant to be the everyday starting shortstop. This time around, you've got someone that you're comfortable with being your shortstop till Kim comes back. So now Alex can do what he's done again, a move on the margins, and so he can go different routes. Let's talk the free agent route first. Steven, there are a couple of guys out there, probably 2 or 3 guys who I think could make sense. We talked about a few of them when we did our utility player breakdown show before we acquired Dubon about a month ago.
Yeah.
But the free agent idea could make sense, and it's something to where you're seeing these type of guys like a Paul DeYoung and Orlando Arcia, they're starting to sign minor league deals. You could go get a notable name to kind of fill that super utility role for a little while at a pretty cheap cost if you went the free agency route.
Yeah. I mean, even if you still want Dubon to start, you just go sign somebody to kind of rebuild some of that depth, at least a little bit. Listen, the names left on the free agent market are not in any way going to, excite you. These are very, very much utility players at this point in their careers. But just a couple of names, IKF, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who played with the Blue Jays, Ramon Urias, who played with Houston, Jorge Mateo, who played with Baltimore the last few years. Kyle Farmer is still, kind of piddling around out there. I think he was with Colorado last year.
Yeah.
He was with the Reds at one point. An interesting name. He's much older. And I don't know if he can play shortstop anymore, but Chris Taylor of the Dodgers is technically still out there. I don't think he plays shortstop. I don't think he's played shortstop in a while. He was more of an outfielder with LA, so that's probably off the table. And then did you want to do trade stuff too? Or do you want to do that separate? Because there's one big trade name that if you wanted to make a splash, whose name has been out there. I'll just say it. I'll let you respond however you want. But Nico Horner's name has been out there for the Cubs because there are people that feel like after the Bregman signing that the Cubs need to clear some payroll. Now, I've heard reports that the Cubs are not going to trade Nico Horner. I don't really understand why they would. It seems like they're trying to win, and Nico Horner's one of their best players. But if there is something out there, some truth to the rumor that they need to cut payroll, Dansby's contract is too big to cut. Nico's is kind of in that sweet spot of big enough to impact your payroll, but also small enough where you could actually reasonably move it. Nico Horner's a name I would look at. That would be very expensive. It would, he's a very good player, but he's also a very good shortstop. He doesn't play shortstop for them because Dansby plays there, and Dansby is also a very good, at least defensive shortstop. But Nico Horner is a name that as soon as I saw this come down, I thought, maybe I'll go look into how available Nico Horner really is. My guess is he's not. Again, I don't understand why the Cubs would trade him when they're trying to win, but he's a guy whose name has been out there for other teams this offseason.
Yeah, no. If the Braves did it, okay, but it just does not seem like an Alex Anthopoulos type move at all.
I just don't understand why the Cubs would trade him. But.
Yeah, I agreed, especially to a team in the National League who they probably see kind of being on their level and they're trying to win. I don't.
I mean, maybe the payroll is maybe the payroll stuff is real, but again, if the payroll stuff is that real, where you have to trade Nico Horner, then I don't understand the Bregman contract, because Bregman's not that much better than Nico Hoerner when you look at overall value. Bregman's a better hitter, but Nico is such an incredible defender that he adds a ton of value to your team. So
Yeah. And I mean, at that point, when Kim comes back, I mean, it's a good problem to have. But I mean, you're at least one of them, or Ozzy Albies, isn't going to play, so that also comes into consideration as well. I just don't see it now. The other thing, and the other reason why I also don't see it, is because Hoerner is going to be due a big payday after this year as well.
yeah,
So I just, and I know that could potentially be the long-term option. And you know what? If Alex Anthopoulos is just tired of this year by year having to put together the plan at shortstop, and instead would like some continuity, would like some, what am I trying? Stability at the position.
yeah.
Maybe he sees the reason for trading for Nico Hoerner and extending him long term.
And that could also be one of the reasons the Cubs do move him, is maybe they don't want to lose him for nothing.
Yeah,
as a free agent. So I don't know.
But I would, when I'm talking trades, I'm more meaning a player in another system who's either blocked or something like that. Not like a Jordan Lawler level of prospect or anything from Arizona, but someone who's very good defensively that the Braves may potentially feel they could add a little bit of ceiling to when it comes to offense. That's the type of trade that I'm meaning. I'm not necessarily thinking of Nico Hoerner. Listen, I would go out and sign IKF tomorrow.
Yeah, that's him or Ramon Urias are probably the two.
You also have Luis Urias. Ramon Urias is a brother who is a former top prospect. Yeah. He's struggled quite a bit over the past couple of years. I would just simply go get that level of player and just add them to the roster. That could deepen your bench once you hopefully are fully healthy for like 5 days, in 2026. But that's the level of player that I would go get if they're looking at external options. And I do think that the Braves have reason to do that. Like even though they do have Dubon, who can step up and be that shortstop every day, you certainly do need another option that can play shortstop. And that's the big thing. I think that they want someone that they could, potentially see play shortstop. Because again, lo and behold, say Ozzy Albies, for whatever reason, he's been injury prone over the past couple of years. Say something happens to him. Yeah, Eli White probably, or Nacho Alvarez probably could play there for a little bit, but maybe you want someone with a little bit higher ceiling. It's not necessarily, I don't think that in reaction to what happened to Ha-Seong Kim, the Braves are going to do anything significant in terms of, going unconventional or adding, a significant addition to the offense. But I do clearly think that they need to add something to their organizational shortstop depth. Once again, just add a bit of insurance.
Yeah. And again, we've talked about this a lot. They don't really have anything in the minors.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's immediately available. They're better off for the future, but nothing immediately available.
Maybe in a few years, this can be solved by a prospect coming up. But in 2026, they just don't have that guy who's anywhere close to being a major league contributor. So, everything's got to be external right now. And, IKF is probably the way I'd go. Is he great? No. He's certainly older. But again, like how we talked about before the Braves signed Kim, finding shortstops is damn near impossible. It just is. Now you can find utility players a little easier. So I think, IKF or Urias or one of those guys, or Renhefo, would sign for, pretty cheap. I don't think it would cost a lot of money. Trades would be more tricky, of course, but I would definitely go sign somebody just to try to build a little bit of that depth back up, especially if Dubon is going to have to play every day, which I think he is. And yeah, it just sucks. We're not going to listen. We've already like 40 minutes on this podcast, so we're about to wrap up. But 30,000 feet, the Braves have got to figure out this injury stuff. I mean, I know it's a freak injury. There's nothing they could do about it. It happened on the other side of the world in January when he's not even with the team. But some of it is signing, Kim was coming off a serious injury. Now, again, it's not like he re-aggravated his shoulder. This is a freak hand injury. So you really can't blame the team for this at all. It's just bad luck. But my God, it's just so much bad luck stacked on top of bad luck over the last 2 years. And like now, because they're having to use Dubon at shortstop, like they can't afford, like, what if Ozzie gets hurt again? What if Riley gets hurt again? Like, I hate to go down that road, but like when you see this injury already in the middle of January before before practices even started, like that's where my mind goes. Like now they don't, all their insurance for their other guys getting hurt is being used at shortstop. So it just sucks, man. It just sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good development. And again, we could sit here and preach all that we want to about how they're in a better position to handle something like this. But the whole point is we're just tired of handling something like this.
Yeah.
It wears on you. I know that many that listen to the podcast cheer for the Atlanta Hawks. I somewhat cover and cheer for the Memphis Grizzlies, and I think that if anybody that follows the NBA, they know that the Memphis Grizzlies have dealt with injury after injury after injury. And the reason I bring that up is because I don't want it to get to the point with the Braves that it kind of is now with the Grizzlies, in that you can have all this hope about what your team could be when you've got its full roster available to play. But the problem is that that's never a reality because the full roster is never healthy.
Yeah.
That's kind of been where the Braves have been over the past 2 years. You just don't want it to get to the point to where that truly defines what we had hoped an era would be, a much higher hopes. I don't think we're to that point yet, but I know every team and their fans can sit here and complain about bad injury luck and all this different stuff, but it has been a bit of a different level when it comes to the Braves, especially when it comes to significant players on the Braves. But the whole purpose of not even being in the season yet is that you got plenty of time to react. We'll continue to cover how the Braves are going to handle this situation. Again, if you're just tuning in, if you are, hello. Ha-Seong Kim out for 4 to 5 months with a torn finger tendon. We've been discussing different things that the Braves potentially could do in order to try to not replace Ha-Seong Kim, but just at least keep things, keep the house straight, for lack of a better way of putting it, until he returns. So, unfortunate, not surprising, but hopefully we'll see the Braves, add more depth just to make sure that they've got the insurance that they thought they had in Dubon. Now they'll have to figure out another insurance plan, as Dubon likely is the everyday shortstop until Kim returns. Steven, anything else from you as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
No, just, the next time I signed off here, I was going to talk about how excited I was about the season and how like football is rapidly winding down and college football is basically done. NFL is down to like the final 4 teams. And like, that usually is kind of the sign for me to really get into baseball. Like I get in baseball mode around this time of year, right at near the end of January. College, my 2 favorite sports are baseball and college basketball. And like springtime is like it is my favorite time of year. And I hate coming on here because the Braves had a significant injury. But that being said, baseball is coming. Like it's rapidly approaching, and Brad and Scott and me and Shawn are going to be here to cover it every week, no matter what, multiple times a week, usually like 4 times a week we do shows. And obviously with spring training about to ramp up, the content's only going to go up from here. So we appreciate you following along. Sorry, this show is under such a negative headline, but we cover it rain or shine. So, but we appreciate the support as always.
Yeah, and we're ready to get to the point to where, and I think you mentioned it. I mentioned it a year or so ago, Steven. We're ready to get to the point that when it comes to talking about Braves baseball, it doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like a treat. That's what we want to get back to the point of being, and I still feel that could clearly be the case in 2026. But man, hopefully Lady Luck will shine and smile on us once again soon. But
we're gonna have to start putting trigger warnings at the beginning of this.
Yeah, I just I don't know. Whatever occurs, if we need to get Dansby to come back to Truist Park and burn some more sage and just not tell the Cubs, I'm ready at that point. I'm to that point just to get this injury bad juju away from us. But you know what? Hey, we've talked plenty about it. You know the story. You know the headlines. You know that the Braves are going to try to figure out something in order to be able to deal with it until we get a bit better injury luck. But for Stephen Tolbert, you can find him at _outliers on Twitter/X, myself at StatsSAC. Until next time, of course, Hammer Territory across all forms of social media, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Till next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory podcast.